Yeah.
Well, so now you
How
know
was your trip?
we're
Fantastic.
down the right track.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we took all the cold weather we could
Yeah,
with
but
us.
I don't understand.
Good.
Was
it cold outside?
Fight for us to go after
Thank
for
We were in
now,
Cambria,
I don't think this
and it snowed in
is
Los
all
Angeles.
hogwash.
Oh my gosh.
Inconsistency is their
Must have
consistency.
been popular.
Yeah, well, yeah, we got a little sunburn. Well, you know, we were in Daytona, and it was chilly. But if you sat in the sun,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Right.
And I didn't wear a hat. So I baked my head, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's one thing I always wear a hat. But
Well.
you know, when you get my age, the wrinkles.
Brown spot.
I look at myself and I almost see one every day.
Forget to cover our hands.
Did I miss something in this packet?
You do look pretty mundane to me. Out in the sun with gloves. I don't know.
But yeah, we had a chance to tour the Hearst Castle. That'd be amazing.
You know, Jennifer and John.
Card.
My car's 14. It's almost classic.
Thanks, Russ. How you doing?
Not too bad.
Good.
Fun day today.
They
Probably
told,
should give them what they want.
they told Don they're not leaving until they get it.
Well, you know I'm all for it.
Are we ready?
You didn't think I'd make it, did you?
Yeah.
I made her. Got her done.
Dean's got some
Ready to go?
leasing bags.
So we'll call this Ways and Means Committee meeting together. This is March 16th and 7:30, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll have roll call.
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Henschel,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Richardson,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Lemko,
Here.
and Fleece is excused.
Okay, next is the approval of minutes of February 16th.
Here. So moved.
Support. Thomas and Wheelock. Any changes or corrections? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Now, at this time, we'll have the first public comment. You want to read the...
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Is there anybody here in the public who would like to make a comment at this time? First of all, I wish to say thank you and appreciate everybody being here this morning. So next is the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
By Inman, support by Richardson. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Is there any special orders of business?
No.
Okay. Next is the action on the consent calendar. You want to read that, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. Receive and file. Number 1, Sheriff's Office Storage Building Change Orders. Number 2, Consumer Price Index Information. Approval. Number 1, East Bay Township Bond Calls, Resolutions, and Contract. Number 2, Appropriation Request.
Is there anybody in the audience like any of those removed from the consent calendar? Anybody on the commission want any item removed?
I just have one question, and maybe Dennis can answer it. In regard to the change orders to the sheriff's building, why are we paying for a change order to add a second hand railing and a set of stairs? Commercial buildings are required by code to have handrails on both sides of all stairways. It should have been in the original plan.
I do not know the answer to that. I can get you an answer though, Commissioner, and have it for you.
You know,
next
I
week.
just, doing what I do every day, it was just really strange to see where I'm paying for a second handrail when all commercial buildings are required to have handrails on both sides of every stairway.
I have not been actively involved in this project. Danny Brown has been assisting the sheriff along with the architect, Mr. Somerville, but I can get you an
Could
answer.
you just ask about that?
I will
Because
be glad
there
to.
should have been rails stuck on both sides of that stairway in the first place.
I'll check for you.
Okay. No items removed, then motion to,
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Support.
by Richardson, support by Gilman. Any other discussion?
It was me, not,
Pardon me?
That was
I
Wheelock
seconded, not Gilman.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor, say aye.
My head
Roll
pointed
call.
down.
Oh, you want roll call?
Yeah,
Sorry,
roll
roll call.
call. Consent calendar.
Commissioner Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes. Next on the agenda is department action items. Document imaging request for the 13th Circuit Court would be the next.
Sign your life away.
Appreciate Judge Rogers and Judge Powers being here this morning.
Morning.
Gentlemen.
I think you probably got the information in your packet, but if we could take a couple minutes and go through why we think this is important. I think it's important to understand how the process presently works when someone files a lawsuit and then papers are received in connection with that case. Right now, it's received in paper by the county clerk's office, which is the circuit court records office. And it comes in usually by mail, sometimes delivery. But this piece of paper is then triggers the creation of a court file, which is literally like a manila file of kind of light cardboard. They have to create this file, clip it in the file, and then go into the record room, which has a very large rolling file in which the files are stored. Every time a piece of paper comes in connection with a case, they have to go find that file, which is in numerical order, pull it out, put the piece of paper in it, and then refile it in this file cabinet. And the individuals who are filing these papers have to send copies to each of the other participants in the case and file what's called a proof of service, a sworn statement that they did that. So they have to copy it for all those people and then mail it usually through the U.S. mail or other parcel delivery service. That's the present process. We have gotten, for this circuit, a permission from the Supreme Court to stop maintaining paper files. We're now authorized, specially authorized, as are 2 or 3 other courts that are doing the same, trying the same e-file project, to maintain files electronically. So what will happen is when a document is filed, it'll come to the clerk's office by email. It'll automatically be served electronically on all the other parties without all that copying and delay of the postage and so forth. The clerk will have the file come in. They will have it in electronic form. Instead of having to go find that paper file, bring it out, take a, punch it, put it in the file, go back and return it to the file cabinet, they will be able to just click on it, indicating it goes to a particular numerical file. It'll be automatically, electronically in that file, and that is what e-filing is about. But that's only half of it. The other half is inside our system. Once it's filed, there is a lot of sending papers here and there to the front of the court's office, to our scheduling clerk, to the Department of Corrections Probation Office, to different people in our office to follow up on. This can be done now by a click of a mouse instead of having paper flowing around and people having to keep track of that. So we think there are efficiencies in both time and expense which are difficult to quantify but are clearly there, and that's why we urge you to consider this project. We're planning to start with civil cases, and I think this summer. And the idea is that with civil cases, we have mostly attorneys involved who we're hoping can be trained, and they will start doing e-filing. A lot of them are already doing it in connection with the federal court system, so they have some experience with it, and they're going to be doing it to begin with. We're going to work out the bugs using just the civil docket, and then later on, probably in the fall, we'll extend this to domestic relations and criminal cases also. So that's the plan. We are requesting, I should tell you that the vendor we've selected, and Phil will talk more about that selection process because we had 3 proposals, but the vendor we ended up selecting is the same one that is currently handling the imaging for the prosecuting attorney's office, the front of the court office, which is already paperless, and for, I think, Dean Bott's finance office.
Yeah.
And particularly with the prosecutor in the front of the court, we have papers going back and forth all the time, so that will make it that much easier to accomplish this. We are requesting $148,000, of which $10,000 is a contingency, and we expect, and Phil will discuss the fee split and how this has been worked out with the vendor, we expect that much of this initial investment can be repaid by these fees. We're not prepared to promise all because it's difficult to predict how much revenue will come out of this. But there will be some recovery. Certainly the ongoing costs will be covered by it, and but we believe there'll be some substantial recovery against the amount you're being asked to invest at this time. Leelanau has already, just by virtue of timing, they ended up having their meeting first. They've approved this and have agreed to participate based on their proportionate number of filings. As you'll recall, you have a joint operating agreement with the other 2 counties in which you, Leelanau, and Antrim split costs based on your relative caseloads, and Grand Traverse is the fiscal agent for those 3 counties. And so Leelanau will take their proportionate shares, approved it. It is our political assessment that Antrim likely will participate. They have not yet been asked. We haven't gone to a meeting with them, but we will next. And we expect them to participate, but of course we can't promise that. That depends on the board, and we'll see. but we believe they are very likely to. Their county clerk, Laurie Sexton, has been involved in our meetings and I think is supportive of the idea. So, Phil?
All right, well, again, good morning. The first thing I'd like to emphasize with you is what a regional process this has been. You know, people talk about regional government and the economics of political federalism. I've always suggested regional government's a good thing to do, but we tend to talk about it more in a recession than we do in good times. And in Michigan right now, the mantra is do more with less. There's no question that that's the mantra. This three-county circuit court of which you participate, if it is not the oldest regional collaboration in the state of Michigan, is one of the oldest. This court has existed as a three-county cooperative effort since shortly after statehood. And we've worked closely, and that's what the point of the first slide was to demonstrate that the clerks have been involved, the IT departments from the counties have been involved, and of course the judges are involved. And what we're doing is building on a system that you approved and financed several years ago. The friend of the court is already paperless. The Grand Traverse County prosecutor is already paperless. The finance department is essentially paperless. It's an opportunity. You know, Tom talked about increasing efficiency and operational efficiencies, and I think he's absolutely right. Last year, because of the recession, you asked everyone, and we agreed, and made some significant budget cuts. And we didn't come back to you and ask to have the staff position that we cut restored. And I know you did restore a number of positions. We didn't because we believe this project, once implemented, will allow us to proceed without that staff position. And it's extremely difficult right now. You know, we don't tell people when they can go on vacation. We have 2 people gone right now, and it's very difficult to run a small, lean operation when you have people that are gone. So we're making do without this position right now, and we believe that it can, in fact, be eliminated and kept vacant if we can get this project in place. Because what it does, a lot of things that are hand-done now will simply be data fields populated by the computer. We won't have to have as much hand-touching of files. And every time a phone call comes in, that event is recorded currently. So we do see some operational efficiencies of quite significant event. There are projects underway around the state. They're principally in, as you might imagine, the Tri-County area, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. Oakland County has the most mature system. Oakland County has been doing general civil filings on the e-file and document management side for a couple of years now. They've expanded it recently into divorce. Wayne County is doing an asbestos project, as is Midland, and Macomb County's order has just been approved, and they'll be moving into this. It is the future. It is what courts will ultimately be doing. The question is this a propitious time to do it, and are you getting good value for your money? And towards that, we've worked pretty hard on a couple of different levels. There's a statewide e-file task force that I participated in since its inception that is putting together the standards. They're currently recommendations, but they will become the standards. And we've been very careful as this project has unfolded to make sure that our project meets all of those standards, that we have future forward technology. Most of you are old enough to remember 8 tracks. I know I am. There are, from time to time, there's technology and it doesn't move forward. And you've got to be able to have a technology system in place so that as technology morphs, someday we may not be using, servers and CDs anymore. I can't imagine what that future is, but we need to have systems in place today that will embrace that technology in the future, or it's just wasted money. And we've made a significant effort to make sure that that occurs. We've also, to make sure this bid is accurate, spent meaningful time with the vendor, and the vendor has done this in good faith. To have a proper document management system that saves time, that makes the most use out of the people that work with you, you've got to properly map it. You have to sit down and basically reduce the workflow in your office from a paper chart to software, and then have that programming done and have it done properly. We've already spent several days with the vendor. The clerks from all 3 counties, the administrative staff have met with the vendor and spent the time to make sure that we understand what the costs are here. That's why I think there's a contingency, but it's a relatively modest contingency, and hopefully it won't be necessary to use it. With regard to the revenue, I can't help it. I know that you suffer from optimistic revenue projections. I know you're going to be suffering from optimistic revenue projections, maybe this evening. It is not our intent to give you optimistic revenue projections. If you look at those projections, we know what comes into our court and what the categories of those cases are. We have those fields populated. They have been for many years by IT. But we have one large category that's called miscellaneous, and we know a big chunk of that is us. So we've done projections where we simply took it off. It's not all us. There are things there that would be paid for by others. And we know that motions have a fee attached to them. However, the rules, which we don't get to make up, are that you can file more than one motion at a time and you'd only pay one fee. We don't have a way of tracking how many times multiple motions get filed. It would simply be anecdotal. So what we did is we did a projection with all the motions and all the miscellaneous in, and one with none of them in. So I can say with absolute certainty we will generate more than $14,536 and less than $35,468. If I was forced to guess from experience anecdotally, probably in the $23,000, $25,000 range, which makes this project self-amortize 5 to 7 years. What is the payback on it? The beauty of e-filing is it generates revenue. No one's charging us to e-file. We have negotiated a 50-50 revenue split on first dollars with the vendor. Nobody in the state of Michigan has that right now outside of Wayne County. Nobody. And the vendor's interested in working with us because we look more like the rest of the state that's able to be marketed than we look like Wayne County or Oakland County. So if they can do a project with us that's successful, and they're doing it at the same time in Ottawa County, they have something then that they can market around the state. And we're helping them with the development side of it as well. So we're getting a tremendous value and a tremendous price. Our next best offer was from a very mature company. They're the company that the Court of Appeals uses. They're the company that Oakland County uses. Unlike the vendor that we selected who has a proven track record in this county, that vendor wanted an additional $96,000 just to program through the firewall. And for those of you who understand tech, we have a firewall. We have a great firewall. We have an IT department that lives and dies by its firewall. Getting through it is a big deal, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. It's not the document management system. It's not the e-file program. They wanted $96,000 just so the two could talk to each other and go through the firewall, and zero revenue split. Zero. So we have, I believe, a one-time opportunity to take this program that essentially self-amortizes, that can also receive benefits in, I hope, at least one spot we don't have to fill on our court, and I think have tremendous operational efficiencies and put ourselves in a good place in the 21st century. As I've noted here, there come up some other savings. We didn't try to quantify how much paper we're going to save, or toner, or how less frequently we'll change copy machines, or how less often people will stand in front of a copier. We haven't done that. But we do believe it's a process that meets a number of your goals. Regional collaboration obviously is one. But you also have talked in your strategic plan about making government more accessible and more transparent. This is 24/7 access without geographic limit. For whatever reason, if you're in Mumbai and you want to look at a case in Traverse City, you'd be able to do that. We will have conventions in place to make certain that things that from which we derive revenue, like certified copies, that we don't lose that. There's a watermarking, stamping procedure that will make sure that people still have to get official copies from the clerk and pay those official fees to show that they're self-authenticating, which is important for certain court rule purposes. So we're looking at streamlining the process, we're looking at reducing waste, we're looking at building in. At every step of this process, there will be a time-stamped audit trail. There'll be no more lawyers, well, I didn't get it, it didn't come in the mail. Yes, you did. Here it is. It was sent to your email address, it's time-stamped, it's dated. It allows people to file stuff 24/7. And we've talked a lot about our savings, and I think it would be remiss if we didn't just touch briefly on the savings for lawyers. There is an analysis that was done by Oakland County when they started this process. Geez, $8, isn't that a lot of money to have something filed and e-delivered? When you look at the cost internally at a law firm to make the copies, to pay for the toner, to have this administrative assistant stand in front of the machine, the postage, and we know lawyers, you know lawyers, it never comes in the regular mail. It comes Federal Express, it comes UPS, because everything gets done at the last minute. And those expenses. In the most conservative analysis with regular mail, this was approximately half of what lawyers currently spend in a general civil case to create the copies and file the multiple copies and distribute them to us. We get copies as well, the judges do. Now, we will now get those documents in a PDF form that we can put Post-it notes on, that we can highlight, that we can write notes on, just as we do on the hard copy we get now. You know, and our goal, the goal that Judge Power and I have set out, is to make this court paperless by the end of 2013. And it's absolutely an achievable goal, absolutely. The next phase would be divorce, because that does generate revenue, and last would be crime, because it doesn't. So that's essentially where we are. Those are our goals. That's what we hope to accomplish, and we'd love to continue to have your support.
Questions? Mr. Thomas?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve and supported. Any other discussion? Sonny?
You know, first I want to recognize the judge's efforts to negotiate a cost share thing, because a lot of those contracts don't happen there, and we've been very fortunate historically to have our judges do that for this county and the residents of this community, and we certainly need to recognize that. You know, obviously my question for Dean and Dennis is, have we identified where this money comes from?
This project would have to be funded from the Capital Improvement Fund. We currently have a balance of $291,663 in it, so it would be cutting that number in half, and you know, we're working towards depleting it. Having said that, we believe that this is an important project, and we believe this is something that needs to be done, and in the long term will bring about efficiencies. And I would agree with the judge's comments. There is an ongoing annual maintenance cost that we will use the revenue that comes from this to help pay that first. The projections of how long it might take to pay this off, I think, has to be looked at in light of the fact that they also are keeping a position open, which is going to pay for this much more quickly. So we're very comfortable with the project. We wish we weren't in a position where we had to deplete that CIP fund the way we will here, but having said that, can't think of a project that's more important for us to do.
Well, I know I've spoken with the friend of the court, and she just loves her paperless operation.
Remember when we started this, we purchased the infrastructure for this. Don brought this proposal to you with a number of other departments, including the district court, and said, we're going to buy this, the main part of this, and then we're going to keep adding departments to it and try to make this county with the goal of eventually being paperless. And we've done 4 or 5 now. I think we did human resources. Did we do that internally? We didn't contract that. We were able to do that one and add that one. District court, we're working. Is it civil, Carol, that we're doing? We're doing civil in district court now. This is the next phase. And so, I think it's important. We're in the early stages, really, of having departments become paperless, but I think it's a project that has to be at the top of our list.
Commissioner Wheel, like you mentioned, that from the court system. Right now, the Antrim County probate judge is recovering from cancer. And Don Sheehan set this up. I can go home in the evening on my personal laptop, access my computer, my county computer that's on my desk here, go into the on-base system and e-sign all of his orders and warrants and show cause petitions for him. Wow. It's just amazing.
Chris, you had a comment?
No, I actually have a question. Are your court dockets online right now?
The docket is online. You can go online and you can see the register of actions. But that's a kind of a teaser. You'll see motion for summary disposition or order entered. But you can't see the document itself. Once this system is in place, you'll be able to click on that entry and you'll see the document. It's incredible.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that I recently attended a NACO conference, and there are other municipalities that have a system similar to what you're describing, and they have said, or they said, that the number of phone calls to the court has dropped 40%. So, it's a little ray of sunshine there.
Yeah, I think just having the register of actions online, where anybody can go online to the county website or the court website and click into the records, you can get a list of every document filed in each case. So if you know the case number, the party names, you put that in, you can see the list right now. And that has reduced calls to the county clerk's register, court records office considerably, because lawyers can go around and see what's been filed. They can't see the document yet, which is one of the real advantages we see for this whole system, but it's helped a lot already.
Will historical documents eventually go into this system, or are you just going to do current?
That'll be up to the clerks. What we've suggested is that as the e-file or as this kind of data storage is approved, the problem is the statutes are old and the technology is new, and the statutes currently require you keep a hard copy for a certain period of time, which the administrative order gets us out of. And then microfilm is what we've been using. It's approving. And microfilm is just completely inaccessible. It's terrible stuff to use. So what we are doing is encouraging the clerks, and as they retire files, to scan them, and then you have a word searchable database. And ultimately, time will take care of this. Ultimately, 10 years from now, everything will be in a word searchable database that people are interested in seeing. So you move forward, and then you deal with the stuff in the back as you retire the files. And at some point, we'll have, I don't know, the county commission workout room, I guess, where the files used to be.
Believe me, we need one.
Jason?
First of all, I'd like to say I was impressed by the amount of work that has obviously gone into this, and both, as Sonny mentioned, with the getting the appropriate bids and dealing with the right vendor, and then just the work. But I have a couple of questions. Becoming paperless means that we potentially are susceptible in other ways. Is there off-site backup? Okay.
Multiple.
Okay.
Each county will back up their files. Grand Traverse County backs up, and then the vendor backs up. So it's backed up multiple ways.
And then are there change logs that track or audit the actual trail or editing of the documents?
Yes.
And then is this interfaced with Pacer or some of the searchable databases?
It is a word searchable database. I'm not that familiar with that. But yes, it's a word searchable database.
But it's going to be our independent database. I mean, it's not linked to anything else right now. I'm not sure what you're referring there.
Pacer is a court system database. It's essentially it's a reference database, and it covers different courts throughout the United States, and it sections them off by western side, eastern side, and then of course mostly
those are excellent questions. And one problem other courts have come in, and I don't understand the technology, but there's something called TIFF files, and we don't want TIFF-wrapped files because then they have to be unwrapped, and you have to buy software to do that. And so we've made sure that we didn't get into that issue.
It sounds like a really great plan, though.
Hey, Dennis?
I just want to point out to the board also that with Antrim, and if Antrim and Leelanau join, our partnership on this project, our cost is 74%. It's based on caseload, so 74% of this is what we pay. And Dean has talked about, and we're working to put together on this whole imaging system a lease chargeback system, where eventually we hope to be able to bring you a proposal to charge this back over time as the cost of this is depreciated, and then return money back to the CIP fund to start rebuilding that CIP fund.
Sonny?
One other comment that I want to make, I remember when we were talking about building the district court building and how the lower levels of those two churches were filled with boxes and boxes of paper records that we had to figure out someplace to put. If we can move forward with, this type of situation, we no longer have that storage problem either.
No, I can't remember what the number was. Judge, I don't know if you remember, when Friend of the Court moved, and we moved them over here to do the remodeling, and then moved them back. I can't remember, but it was something like
it was a million documents, and
I want to say it was 178 file boxes that we
If
moved
you
back.
recall your tour, I know you all went over and toured the courthouse when the renovations were done. There's a large conference room on the second floor, 16 chairs in it. That room was jam-packed full of internal Friend of the Court documents, you're right, all of which were scanned. Judge Power had the notion to get rid of all of our pre-sentence. We had 20, well, between us, 40 years of pre-sentence reports. Those were all scanned into a database. The files are gone, the paper's gone, and now when a young person who's got a probation violation comes before us, nobody's looking for I turn around in my chair, I click on the database, and I can see exactly what the old pre-sentence report said. My notes are on the face of it. It's tremendous time saver.
And while we're making progress on it, there's hardly a month goes by where I don't get a call from somebody saying, is there any more storage space? You know, we're running out of room, and that's after following the statutory requirements to get rid of anything that we can in the same time limits. We were pretty aggressive about that, so we still have a long way to go.
Have a roll call on this?
Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yeah.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes, please.
Limcool?
Yes. Motion's carried. Thank you,
you,
for the
Judge.
21st century.
Appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you for coming this
Welcome
morning.
to the 2000th century.
I was just about to say, let's vote on it before it's out of date.
You want me to recycle your paper for you?
Yeah.
Okay, next is document imaging for district and circuit court.
That's what we just did.
That was just for information.
That was just for information, okay. So, next is resource recovery.
Bob Ostrat, Resource Recovery Department Manager. What I've got for you this morning is a recommendation that was made at the Resource Recovery Council in December. We talked about funding for the department, and the council voted to recommend to the Board of Commissioners that the department be funded with a dedicated millage. I've also included in your packet some different funding options that are available and are used around the state of Michigan. I think you've probably seen, or most of you have probably seen the different funding options. And I'm here today, obviously, to address the issue of funding for the department early on in the process this year. And I'm available to answer any questions or...
Larry.
Well, I know that we've had ongoing discussions about whether the landfill surcharge is an appropriate mechanism to fund solid waste and to fund your department. And I know in this year's budget, we agreed to lower it substantially to cover your department operational costs. I think with some fund balance that will be appropriated for it. But I think this is one of the things that, when it comes to a millage during these sort of economic times, you know, we've seen enough efforts go into road millages, and other than senior issues, I can't see that the public has any appetite to have anything move forward in terms of additional tax costs to them, especially when they can see that, you know, we're currently covering the charge by another means that they may or may not understand. I guess, from my opinion, I would not be in favor of moving forward and placing this as a ballot issue to the public.
Sonny.
Okay, well, obviously you can tell by the vote that I wasn't at the December.
Yeah, I was looking for your vote. I mean, what'd Sonny do? Where's the minutes to that? That's what I was looking for.
You know, this is a department that, you know, we've had multiple discussions over a number of years of what this department should look like and how we should fund it. And I'm not sure that we have any clear direction yet at this time. Resource Recovery Council asked this board to put millage on the ballot, and, you know, that's before you today. Also in your packet, they list the other identified sources of funding, you know, and you know, the PA 13869, we went through an extensive process in the last 2 years of meeting with all of the townships about what they wanted their solid waste programs to look like, and there was absolutely no consensus. And if we can't have a consensus of what each of the individual units wants, I don't know how we would do a countywide system. And we've heard from the townships, we don't want a countywide system in the first place. You know, that's why we're in the process of rewriting our solid waste plan with the Solid Waste Planning Committee, because the townships and the different communities are looking to do something different in their communities, either by individual contracts, by hauler of choice programs. So, you know, the PA 13869 thing countywide doesn't make any sense unless we have a consensus of what we want to provide throughout the county. If we look at the voter millage, you know, Larry just said it, you know, the community identified one of their number one concerns was roads, but they wouldn't support a millage to support roads. How are they going to support, you know, although, you know, Bob and I have talked about it, it's, you know, it's less than $1 a month for a household to fund this department. So it's not a significant amount of money, you know, for the individual households. But, you know, we look at the increase the hauler licensing fees. We just spent a great deal of time and effort to negotiate lower costs for our taxpayers for solid waste. If we increase the hauler licensing fee, by all of the explanations that are in here, they're going to pass that cost onto their customers.
Right.
You know, who are our constituents. You know,
So far, I agree with you, Commissioner. We're on the same page.
we're getting there, you know. Obviously, I have notes on all of these. You know, in general fund appropriation, you know, we all know what our budget's like. You know, we've talked for a long time, or at least myself and some others talk for a long time. This needs to be a user pay program. You know, sure, we can fund things like the household hazardous waste or something like that. We need to identify funding for those. But as far as the other stuff, the users that are using it still assume that recycling is free, and we need to identify that. But we've cut that back significantly with the elimination of the drop-offs. The special assessment requires interlocal agreements. Those were all eliminated in December of last year. There are no interlocal governments in place. And the landfill surcharge is the funding source that we have.
Your favorite.
Well, no, not even close. But the point about it is, you know, there's a multitude of things. You know, I've always contended that it's simply unfair to commercial and industrial, who provide 65% of our waste, but have the highest percentage of recyclables in their waste stream. You know, so what they're taking to the landfill is stuff that you can't recycle, but they're being penalized because they can't recycle that part. And they're funding our programs, and we do not offer any services to commercials, you know, as far as formal programs. You know, the other thing about that is we have no way to audit it. We're assuming that the landfills are telling us how much volume they're getting, and that's coming from Grand Traverse County. So, you know, I'm not sure that we've identified yet a good source of funding. I really am not.
I think the answer to I think I heard you say no, that none of those work.
None of the
Yeah,
above.
I don't like any of it. You know, but the problem is, you know, I think we truly have to identify how this department is going to operate.
Yeah, I agree.
What this department is going to do. And I think if we're a little bit patient, this Solid Waste Planning Committee that we've got seated right now is going to make this department look significantly different in the next 6 months.
Dennis?
Yep, I agree with Commissioner Wheelock. I think that there will be some changes that you'll be looking at in terms of the configuration of this department and the responsibilities of this department when you go to budget this year. I think, you know, Bob and I talk a lot about what are our functions going to be. We may still have an education role. We may have a marketing role. We certainly have an administration role from the standpoint of assisting the local units. Bob has probably worked on 3 or 4 of these contracts, or more, Bob, helping the local units develop these contracts that they're bidding out with the haulers. Bob has been the one who's helped them develop those contracts. Right now he's working with Fife Lake, I believe. So we have a role in that regard, but I think our role changes because we're not going to have drop-offs any longer. Those are gone. And so the cost of this will change as well. And I do agree with everything you said, Commissioner. You know, I still am a proponent that we have a surcharge in place, and while it's not perfect, it's one that's being paid by everybody. I'm worried that if it goes away, we're not going to see it reflected in cost savings to the citizens. And in fact, we've we've gotten cost savings by bidding out these contracts, so I feel pretty good about that. But I think the scope of that could change. We cut that surcharge in half, I think, this last year. And that could change again depending on where we go. I still believe the surcharge is the most practical way and that we should continue it on. And the board's going to have some discussions. We wanted to get this to you today we've had this for a couple of months, and finally Bob's board said to him, when are you going to take that to the county board? And we were like, well, we'll take it, but we're not real sure it's going to get a good reception with millage as the proposal. But I think, within a couple months, we will have some more information on the ordinance and the plan and what it looks like, and that will be beneficial and help you decide this. But I guess the only thing we would ask you at this time is, we would like to secure a funding mechanism that we don't have to look at year after year after year. I'd like to come up with something that you're comfortable with, that we can put in place until a time that you want to change it. And I agree with you. I think going to the voters and asking them, or the citizens and asking them to put any more money through PA 138 or through a millage, it's just not a practical alternative. And raising licensing fees on these private haulers, I don't think makes sense either. I only see the option of the surcharge that's already in place and reducing it as the most likely alternative. But you'll have to decide that in upcoming months. I wanted to remind you two things. First, the one thing that I've always had a concern with, and I know commissioners share, is this fact that we have no way to really assess whether we're getting all the revenue that should be coming in from this landfill surcharge. Bob has been paying special attention to that over the last 6 months or so, and we, for the first time in years, have seen a turnaround in those numbers. The Grand Traverse County numbers are Leelanau numbers were up here, and Grand Traverse numbers were here. Leelanau numbers now at, like, the Glens landfill are going down, and Grand Traverse numbers are going back up. And I believe it's the direct result of Bob's attention to the haulers and how they're taking stuff to the landfill. So we've seen that turned around. We've had an increase in waste volume last year for the first year and as long as I can remember. So I think paying attention to that makes good sense. The second thing I wanted to mention is, I think I mentioned to you last month, Bob and I are working on a reorganization of this department to bring you a recommendation to consider moving this under the County Board of Commissioners, taking it out of the Board of Public Works. We think that just makes more sense, that it fits better with you, and so I think you're going to expect to see that in April. We'll be bringing you some proposal on that for your consideration.
Mr. Thomas?
Well, I've always been opposed to the surcharge. I think it's a poor way to collect money because there is so many doors open for money to disappear. And I've always been a proponent of either 169 or 138, but I don't think it's the time now to push them for a different reason, and that is because so many of the townships are working with the waste haulers to come up with single hauler in the township. I think we should let them go ahead at least for a while to see how many they come up with. I suggested over the last month or so that Green Lake and Grant and them go together. It would certainly help Grant out if they could band together with a larger township to get one hauler. And so I think if nothing else, we should have some time to let go by to see what happens with some of these possible contracts that haven't been written yet. So.
Sonny?
I guess the only other thing I'd like to add, and Dennis is absolutely right, is these people are going out and negotiating these contracts with haulers, and they're trying to lock in 3-year, 5-year contracts. We also owe it to not only our constituents, but the haulers, to identify if we are going to assess them, whether it be the surcharge or an increased hauler license. We need to notify them of that. So I truly believe that we, as much as I hate the surcharge, and I'm pretty confident that I'll never vote for it. I haven't in 20 years, so I probably won't start now.
I thought you voted for it
I did once for an extension.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we need to identify that this funding source will be in place for a 5-year period or something, so we don't come in here in October of every year and have this discussion again.
Right. So I take it that everybody feels that we don't want to take any action on this at this time?
Right.
Is that the feeling I get? Okay, we'll go on to the next. Thank you. Do you have any other comment?
Thanks, Bob. I'm sure we will talk.
Yeah. Okay. Next is the Health Department facilities.
Well, I'll start out on this. Fred Kiesler is here, Jerry Pugh is here, and Ray Kendra, the architect, is here. One thing I did want to clarify, because there was some confusion, in the first paragraph of my letter to you, the $1,722,000 and the $495,000 is related to the 5-year expense that we talked about. We have, I hope my letter is fairly self-explanatory. We did review the option of looking at the Tom's vacant building as a possibility. We did not go into detailed negotiations with the owner's representatives, but we did provide you some projections at about a 20% reduction in fee, assuming we could negotiate that, and I don't know how likely that is, because we were told, whether accurate or not, we were told that there is a proposal in their coffers at the $5.50. Whether that's true or not, we would assume we could negotiate a better rate than that, because I think we were a desirable client to have in the facility. The analysis is provided. Ray Kendra and Ray Kendra's staff and our engineers went into the Tom's building, went through the building, and provided you some preliminary cost estimates of what it would cost to renovate that and put it in the order that we needed for the dental clinic and for the health department expansion. The Tom's building does provide a couple thousand square feet more than what we would have at our present site. It provides better access, we think, and it provides the benefit of one-floor service, which we think are all benefits to our customers. And so for those reasons, we saw those as positive things. On the health service building side, we own the building, of course, so that takes away the lease cost. It's already sized to what our departmental needs is, and it will fit. The customers are very familiar with it and seem comfortable with it in the surveys that we've done. And of course, the big item is on the estimates of cost. The cost to operate that building, or to own that building and operate it, are significantly less. Commissioner Fleece talked to me at length about this, and one of the things I told the commissioner was, well, the problem is that we own the building, and if we move to another building and lease it, we've got this building. And he said, well, there are other departments that we could move in there, and he is correct. The problem is then there would be another building that we would own that we would not be utilizing unless we could rent it out, and that would probably be the Front Street building where we have the Commission on Aging staff and the MSU Extension staff. And quite frankly, the health building is much bigger than their building, and so we would not have utilized that space. So it opens up a number of questions. We project in the first 5 years that the cost differential to move to the Cherryland building, it would cost us an extra $1,172,477 at the $5.50 square foot lease. And if we were able to negotiate a rate of $4, that the cost to the county over the first 5 years alone would be $938,000. These people are here to answer any questions that you have, to talk about the detail analysis. Bottom line is, our recommendation is, after reviewing the facility, while it was good that we looked at it, we believe that that the original option of moving ahead with the design and developing the bid specs on the present location is the more cost-effective alternative, and will save taxpayers dollars. We'll answer any questions you have.
Go ahead, Ross.
Dennis, could you, or maybe someone in the health department, could explain the financial relationship with Dental Clinics North?
Yeah. Do you want to do that, Jerry or Fred?
They're merely
Please introduce yourselves, okay?
You need to bring the microphone.
Pull the speaker.
Finance and Administrative Services Director for the Health Department. The dental clinic is really just a tenant in our building. They pay the county rent for the space that they occupy. And, that has been the arrangement.
Okay, so is that, I guess my question is that figured into the way the numbers are presented, that we are getting rent for that portion of the building?
That was figured into the financing of the remodeling, the ability of the dental clinic to pay their portion of the cost.
Of the expansion?
Of the expansion and equipment for that facility.
Okay, so we're not paying for the equipment that goes into it.
We talked about the idea of possibly bonding for that equipment with them paying us off in a 10-year agreement because it would be cheaper for them. But they've also expressed their willingness to do it on their own. We just think we can do it more cheaply for them. And so if that option is there for them, they'd like to take advantage of it.
Okay, but for instance, and again, going back to your memo, Dennis, you talk about it cost at the 550 level, you talk about it costing the county $1.722 million, and then you said of which $495,000 would be attributed to the dental clinic. So does that mean that we could subtract $495 from the 1.722, or is that already calculated?
I'm not sure I'm following.
Well,
you.
the one
You
point-
and
I mean, if they're paying rent to us,
Right.
how does that $500,000 figure in?
It is in the number of the $1,722,000.
The analysis that's on page,
I'll let you.
the analysis that's on page 61 includes the dental clinic component sharing in the cost. Now, going back a few meetings, they were limited on what they could pay on an annual basis. We were trying to work within their financial means as well, but that's included. If you look at the bottom of the page, Jerry has provided a scenario 1 and a scenario 2 option. The dental clinic is included in the $1.7 million, and again, this is just the first 5 years of this project.
So the answer to your question, Commissioner, I think I have it now, is if you look at that under Cherryland Tom's option summary, the first scenario, it's saying that they have indicated they can only pay $495,000. So there's a net $258,000 additional that we would have to cover in those first 5 years. So the $1,172,000 is after we credit the $495,000 that they can pay. So in those first 5 years, they can't pay their share of that, which is $753,000. So that is net. $1,172,000 is after they pay their rent that they've identified they can pay.
And I think that...
Pull that over,
it was for a
Fred, please.
20-year, Fred Kiesler, Health Department. I think that there was over a 20-year payback on the dental equipment.
That is correct.
Not 10 years.
Oh, I thought the dental equipment was 10, we said. Did we change it?
We were looking at a 20-year amortization to help them with their, we were trying to work within that 100, they had kind of told us that they could finance at the $100,000 rate annually, and we were looking at a 20-year amortization, not only on the building cost, but also the cost of the dental equipment that they would need for, a 12-chair operation. And yes, we were on a 20-year amortization.
I apologize. I thought, we were at 10 at one time, were we not? In our discussions with them.
That was higher than they could afford for what their intake was.
So I guess I want to say that, in addition to being, so if you take that average of $1,172,000 divided by 5 years, $250,000 a year, if you lease it for 20 years, it's $5 million that we would pay extra.
Okay.
And that is summarized, excuse me for interrupting, but that's, if you look at the top scenario 1, the full page spread, Jerry has that identified in the far right column, that additional cost on an annual basis.
And that's assuming if the rent would stay the same for 20 years.
Correct.
At times, you mean?
Yes, at
Right.
times.
Yeah, and I think they had agreed to 5-year rent, or was it 10-year rent?
They seemed
When we
to
talked.
be negotiable, but I
Yeah.
didn't think 20 years
Yeah.
wasn't mentioned.
We had hoped, originally, we had talked to some representatives who told us that they thought we might be able to get a year or two with no rent for us to get up and running, and in our discussions with them, they were unwilling to do that. They were willing to do it for the time of construction.
Okay.
But then after that, we would
But
have to
that's
start
all.
paying, at the Toms, yes.
Okay, so then, and again, not to keep belaboring the point, but is the dental clinic's paying, if we do the remodel at the health department, are they paying for part of the remodel?
They are. They're paying all their costs associated with the remodel, including the additional space that they would have
Okay.
and all the equipment.
So the numbers that we see on the cost there then already account for the fact that they are paying for their share.
They are included in there. Yes, they've been figured in.
Okay, and then one final question. You just said that Tom's has a couple thousand square feet more than current. Is
Well,
that?
excuse me, more than are proposed at
More
our
than your
building.
proposed.
Yeah.
Okay,
What was
thank
it,
you.
35 and 32, I think, roughly?
Yes.
Somewhere in that area?
Okay.
Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we move forward with the Health Department expansion at the current site.
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Sonny.
Okay, I guess my comments, I have a real significant problem with spending $4 million to remodel a building that we don't own. That's always going to bother me. And, the idea that we'd pay this much more money over a 5-year period to be in a building that we don't own, and I'm sure Ray's pilled into here, that Tom's building, while it looks very big, when you start, it's got ceilings that are a lot higher than we need. When we start closing this thing off and putting office space in here, our heating doesn't work, our lighting doesn't work, our airflows don't work. All of those things are going to be significant problems for the mechanicals when it comes time to rebuild that building. They're designed to be big open buildings, and that's what they need to be, or else they're not efficient in any fashion. And that's why the costs go so high, is because you have to identify, or you have to rework all of those systems. I don't know what we would do with all those coolers and refrigerators and freezers that are in the back of there. It's a long ways from lunch coolers, but, I think we made a lot of effort to move forward with a very practical addition to the building. We could justify the cost of it. We negotiated the contracts with Dental Clinics North, to where they talked about, basically they were funding their portion of it. It just makes sense to move forward with this. I have no problem with the idea that we took time to look at this other building that was in close proximity, but I think it's now time to start moving forward because, we all know that have been there. The health department building is bulging at the seams, and it's not efficient. The mechanicals need to be upgraded, the roof needs to be upgraded, and all of those things we're going to get with this remodel. We're not only going to get the additional space we need for Dental Clinics North, but we're going to get the efficiencies that we need in our existing building as part of this remodel.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Larry.
They're predominantly Medicare,
Medicaid,
patients,
yes.
and didn't Medicaid, about a month or two ago, no, maybe 6 months ago, indicated they were no longer going to fund certain portions of dental treatments.
Dr. Verizon met with the new state administration,
Okay.
and it's the governor's intention not to cut adult Medicaid services. The federal law requires Medicaid services for children,
Okay.
for dental, but it's optional for the adult. And his indication was that this governor does not want to go into that. And I think I shared an email with some people on that wall indicating that.
I didn't want to get into a
Absolutely,
situation
I
where we're
think-
putting money into a building and all of a sudden the rules change and they don't want to fund Medicaid anymore in terms of dental. Then we've got an empty
I
building.
don't think
but
there's anything that could, there's risks and everything.
I understand that.
Do we know
But all the
what,
indications look good.
Right.
do we know what portion of Dental Clinics North clientele is children?
Yeah, roughly half.
Okay.
I just want to say that I'm a little bit disappointed because I was looking at access, and, I don't think we've looked at the cost of people trying to get to that facility. I'm not sure how you even calculate that. But I do hope that we might be able to work with Beta and the public transportation to maybe get that on on part of the fixed route, so that it gets there on a half hour instead of on the hour.
Commissioner?
Because that is very difficult. And also, I hope that we can get with Garfield Township and look at how do we put some sort of sidewalk or pathway from the Cherryland Mall, from Airport and Garfield to, all the way out to the Health Department.
Commissioner, we have started both of those discussions. Fred has met at length with Mr. Menzel at the Beta Garage. Fred is also exploring the possibility of accessing through the state a token program similar to what we do with the Commission on Aging to allow access for our clients to use Beta, and has talked with them about increasing the frequency of use of the facility, and Mr. Menzel has been receptive to that potential. I have talked with Supervisor Korn at the township, and they are in the process of developing a sidewalk program. I've even explored the idea with him at the suggestion of Commissioner Richardson of us looking at helping to potentially fill in the gaps of sidewalks out to the health department. But of course, the problem is until there's maintenance that's going to be on the sidewalks, they're not very useful in the winter. So we're doing both of those things, and we think we can make some inroads to improve access for our customers.
So I just appreciate everybody looking at it, and and it was it's one of those ideas that you just have to look at. If you don't, then you wish you always had them. So
yep,
I appreciate it. So motion on the floor, Chris.
Make me please feel comfortable that we're going to have the funding to do this renovation. Where is the money coming from?
We're going to bond.
Do you want to take that, Dean or Jer?
Yeah, my original computation, basically, with the rent that we are paying for our existing building, which, is paid of as of this year, I understand, we basically will be able to fund the projected cost of renovation and financing by similar amounts, roughly $250,000 a year, along with payments from the dental clinic of about $100,000 a year. So I don't have those projections here, but when we put together the original package, that was basically the bottom line.
And remember, this last fall, the board agreed to pay off the rest of the health debt, the debt on the health building, which freed up $100,000 or roughly that we were paying on the debt of the building as well. So we feel pretty comfortable that this will work out.
I have a question. Wasn't this expansion already voted on by the board, and so this is a revisiting of that decision to go forward?
Yeah, you made a decision a couple of months ago to postpone continuation of developing bid specs and getting ready to bid it out while we looked at this other option. And I think what we're asking here is to restart that and continue to move forward now.
Ross?
Just one final question, and this is probably directed at Ray. Any idea what a rough square footage cost would be if we went out and built a new building to specifications?
With the 30,000 square feet number that we're using, it would probably be, we would not feel comfortable less than $175 with all the plumbing and different aspects that both the dental clinics and the medical clinics would have. So
somewhere in the vicinity of $5 million probably.
The big picture too is that you've got a lot more site work, infrastructure, utilities that you'd bear on a new site that you don't have at any of the existing sites. So that would be a big addition that we're not looking at right now in cost. So I think that factored in, there wouldn't be a comparison between a renovation and a new building from that standpoint. So.
Okay, we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Thank you very much for your work and diligence on that. Thank you, Ray. Good to see you again. Next on the agenda is Planning Development, Brownfield Plan, East Bay Plaza. Is that you, Gene? Okay.
Did we get your autograph? I seen you on the 11 o'clock news last night.
Ooh, she was? Oh, cool.
Talking about this project.
Good morning. My name is Jean Dorenzi with the Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Department. The plan before you is a redevelopment for East Bay Plaza. It encompasses about 9.8 acres of property, and it encompasses the East Bay Plaza, the Sheldy's Restaurant, Marathon, and the Travel Lodge component. The Brownfield plan, the eligibility is due to the historical dry cleaning plume that, because of the natural groundwater, has extended into the parking lot. With the brownfield plan itself, we will remediate that plume. We'll do improved infrastructures for the total cost of $2.4 million. The private investment is $6 million, and the duration of the brownfield plan is 24 years.
We had a presentation on this 2 weeks ago?
February 28th
Yeah.
for the Brownfield Authority.
Okay. So can I have a motion?
I would move to move forward with the brownfield plan for East Bay Plaza.
Support.
Well, is there any other discussion? Larry?
Help me understand how this is going to get repaid back.
It will be paid back by the tax increment financing. The incremental taxes that are paid by the owners of that property will
Okay.
capture those and pay back those eligible activities.
Based on the new development.
Based on the new development.
Correct. That $6 million that will be an added investment into that property.
And that will take how long to do? 20 years?
We're estimating 24 years.
24 years. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Ross?
And what taxes are being captured? Is this something basically everything's being captured? Or?
Yes, all of the taxes, the city, county, Commission on Aging, the library, and the state taxes as well.
Okay, and is this a situation where the state is reimbursing us for the school part, or?
Yes, the state will make us whole.
But we're basically setting aside the increase in all those other funds then, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I have gotten some calls on this, but these buildings are going to be demolished?
The buildings...
like where Joanne Fabrics is now, and Sheldy's and so forth?
Joanne Fabrics, they're proposing to demolish and build a new superstore. Sheldy's, the funeral home, and the travel lodge.
Wow.
Okay. And the Marathon Station?
The Marathon Station, right now, it's proposed to stay, I believe.
Okay, all right. And this is, so basically they're going to tear the buildings down, remediate the pollution, and then go back and redevelop, right?
Right. The remediation of the plume will occur in the first and second phases, so prior and during the demolition.
Oh, okay.
Dennis?
As you know, I sit on the Brownfield Board along with Herb, and I wanted to relate to the board that in our vote to do this, at least from my perspective, the development was definitely secondary. The main consideration of us was the fact that this plume, this dry cleaning plume, is moving towards the lake. And we felt very strongly that, it's right across the street, basically. Anything we could do to mitigate that and clean that up, that was really critical. So that was a big part of our decision to do this.
Okay. Larry?
Can you describe how they will remediate? Will they just, is it a matter of taking all the soil out, or are you going to have to you're going to have to do different mechanisms to stop? Is it just a stopgap thing, or are you just going to actually go in there and take all the soil sample and all the soil and replace it? How are you going to do this?
Actually, it's not going to be a soil removal. It's going to be a system that they're using.
Yeah.
That's federally approved, and it'll take probably 2 years to completely remediate that. But just to remove the soil will not remediate what needs to be done.
So you're going to basically stop it from going into the bay?
Correct.
Multiple wells that are about 20 feet deep.
All right.
In a series starting from the road going back toward the building.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Jason.
What type of contaminants are these? Are they toxins? Are they how do they affect our groundwater? What is the effect that we're looking at?
It's the same thing that was on the Grand Traverse overall site in Norris School.
I don't know what those are either.
That's
the dry cleaning solvents, what's the toxic chemicals that are in there?
PCBs,
They're not PCBs, but they're, I can get the solvents for you, but I'm sorry, I'm not in
Okay, and now,
environmental.
as far as the brownfield application, did these businesses apply then for the brownfield application? I mean, did the towns?
Not the businesses themselves, the owner of
The property.
The property, which
Got it.
is East Bay Plaza LLC.
And then, as far as the financing comes from, right, first off, the financing comes from who pays, who writes the checks to begin with?
The property tax bills, whoever gets the property tax bills pays those taxes, comes to the city treasurer, and then the county treasurer would meet with them, capture the incremental taxes, and then we pay back the developer over a period of time.
The developer pays for the
first.
cleanup.
Cleanup is
And
paid
then
for
they
by
are
the
reimbursed.
developer up front.
Okay, and then after
Correct.
24 years, it goes back to the normal tax state?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. All of that cleanup is paid for upfront by the developer.
I have to be reminded how the TIF system
Okay.
works.
And all of the costs associated with the cleanup have to fall within the development plan and have to be reviewed and approved. If they're outside the plan, they're not eligible for reimbursement.
So, and it could be paid off in shorter than 24
Mm-hmm.
years. Depends on the increase in values and what you got in
Right.
property taxes.
On or before.
Yep. Sonny?
Gene, I know we've talked about the redevelopment of this parcel a couple times, different meetings. Did we end up with a residential component to this development also?
We are trying to get a residential component in there, and we'll be working with the developer to try to work to get a
I
workforce
know
piece
we were
in
looking
there.
for an affordable housing component at this at one time, and I just didn't know where we ended up.
It's still in the brownfield plan to try to get that workforce in there.
Ross?
And Gene, just another question on how this works. Do we reimburse actual costs, or do we reimburse the projected costs that are in
No.
the budget?
Actual cost. They submit
Actual costs
invoices.
not to exceed,
There's,
not to exceed what's budgeted, right?
right. The table that you have in your packet has line items, and they can't exceed those line items.
Okay.
And I mean, Gene goes through those bills, and if there's something that doesn't qualify under the plan, that's removed, and we're regularly approving bills at a lower amount than requested, you know.
And some of those bills come in 2 and 3 years later.
Oh, yeah.
That's what blew my
Well,
mind.
some of the bills,
Yeah.
it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 years before revenue is generated to repay them, and
Right.
the developer has to take the cost on.
Any other discussion?
He mentioned affordable housing. What does that have to do, I mean, I guess, what does that have to do with the cleanup of the plume? And obviously, that is our first.
It doesn't, but I was just, when we looked at some redevelopments of this parcel of property, you know, which we always look at as part of the brownfield plan, we always try to look for a affordable housing component if we can to some of these kind of developments.
Does the problem in what I see as far as recapturing the value is if you force an affordable housing component into it, then that sets a series of limits for the use of the property. Mm-hmm. If you set a series of limits to the use of the property becomes worth less, thereby becoming less of a tax base where we can recover those costs.
Right. Right, but we're trying to work within that development and the developer to have a more integrated piece, so it's a mixed-use piece, Commissioner Gilman. So even though some of the property will have a higher value, but you'd have a residential component. So it meets what the city wants to, is have a mixed component and a more place-making setting in their developments. But there's a cost scenario that you do with that developer to encourage him to get affordable workforce in there and know where that cash flow is so it doesn't extend out too long. And it's basically a negotiation with them.
So it's a negotiation that could potentially extend the cost that we as a county...
No.
No,
it cannot extend past what you approve here today.
I think it's the environment, like Dennis said. That's our number one thing. Let's clean this plume up. And that's what this gives us the opportunity to do. Ross?
Well, that's true, and certainly the environmental cleanup is, you know, what's driving this, but I mean, just to be clear, it's a $2.5 million brownfield project, and of that, $710,000 roughly is for the environmental part, and the rest, the $1.76 million, is for, basically redevelopment of the site, in conjunction. So there is a rather healthy tax break being given to the development on top of the cost of the environmental cleanup. And that's why the discussion about affordable housing was brought into it. So.
And that's probably part of the, that's part of the incentive that you get the developer to do the cleanup. To do the cleanup on its own is not necessarily going to be their motivation, right. But, the increase is certainly, and you remember the presentation you got a month ago or showed the vast increase in taxable value that comes as a result of these projects, even though you have to sometimes wait, has proven to be successful, I think, with these kinds of programs.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, the incentive to do the cleanup would certainly be, as far as the developer is concerned, would be to have the best use of the property, which may or may not be affordable housing. And I'm not trying to get too much on the affordable housing thing. I mean, if somebody wants to voluntarily build affordable housing or to provide, that's one thing. But when we mandate specific things, and that's obviously a part of this plan, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
But it's not mandated.
it's not going to be mandated. So
No.
it's going to be it's just going to be unallowable by the developer. But we're not going to say you must do this.
Right.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
And we are
Just thanks
encouraged,
for clarifying.
we remember zoning and development, land use development is really a local decision, not a county decision. And when the city says, we'd like to see these components in there, we try to include those components when we can.
Right.
When we're in the negotiations and crunching the numbers, they don't always work. And, the bottom line is the developer doesn't need to move forward at a cost if it's not includable. Is that correct, Gene?
That is correct.
Okay, anybody else? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Next is John with the Michigan Development Corporation Initiative.
Good morning, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Director. I'm just following up from our meeting that you had with the City Commission on February 28th that looked at this concept of a Next Michigan Development Corporation. Since that time, we've had presentations and information from various units of government regarding support of that effort in terms of presenting a notice of intent to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. The City Commission formally approved support for issuance of that notice of intent. We've also been in front of Garfield, Blair, and East Bay Township boards, and they have all supported the effort of at least submitting a notice of intent. We've also been in communication with Peninsula Township, and the supervisor has indicated support, at least at this juncture, and we've also been in communication with Elmwood Township, and we expect to be doing a presentation to both Elmwood and Peninsula Township at some point in the future. I won't go into details. I think you had an opportunity to fully discuss the Next Michigan notice of intent. So I guess what we are here today is just to present the concept in terms of proceeding for actual formal action, since it is the county and the city that must issue that notice of intent as part of the requirements from the MEDC. The other units of government are not required, but certainly the intent of what the Next Michigan Development Corporation Initiative does is trying to identify regions. And certainly, so more of the buy-in from those local units of government are important to any type of successful application. We've also, this has been a joint partnership with the City of Traverse City, the Chamber of Commerce, Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation, the college, and the Council of Governments. And Again, the notice of intent just basically puts our name in the process and allows us, if we go forward with a formal application, which, from my understanding, that we have a better time frame on when that would be due. I think it was June 1st?
July, I think is
Oh,
going to be
July.
more.
So, and that's if we actually put in an application, but at this time, it's just the notice of intent.
Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we move forward with the notice of intent for the Next Michigan Development Corporation.
Do I have support? Support. Larry? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Maxbauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Nay.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Next is the EDC loan for Cellular.
I'll be joined by Tino Brightup.
Okay.
Your official introduction.
Good morning, everyone. Tino Brightup. I'm the Senior Vice President of Economic Development for the Traverse City Area Chamber of Commerce, and I head up the Traverse Bay EDC.
We are also accompanied by company representatives, Ronald Silke and Andy Robelchuk, and Mike Dukoski from Traverse City State Bank. The request is for a working capital loan. It is an amount of $280,000. Solaire has been in business since 2001. They have 28 employees, and with this working capital, they will hire 8 additional employees. The need for the loan is based on a contract from Goodman Networks, which is one of the largest end-to-end communications solution providers in the United States. In addition to the working capital, they'll also be getting a $66,000 loan from another financial institution for vehicles and equipment. The primary bank, Traverse City State Bank, will increase their revolving credit facility by $10,000, making their debt to the bank of $485,000, converting $75,000 of that $485,000 into a revolving credit facility. As a working capital loan, the recommendation from the EDC is to award for $280,000 for a contract for a term of 7 years with an interest of 5.5%, with collateral being second on all business assets and personal guarantees from the owners.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Sonny, support? Thomas? Any discussion? Larry?
Yes, just a question in terms of the structure. I guess I've been used to having operating capital in the form of a line of credit, a revolving line of credit, and then the bank has that monitored by a loan agreement based on receivables, inventory, and those kinds of things. So it's tracked on an ongoing basis rather than taking the capital and terming it out over a period of time. Usually that's done with fixed assets, equipment, land, buildings, where you do a full amortization on a fixed asset. So I guess I'm not used to seeing, and I don't recall us doing capital loans, working capital loans on a term basis rather than a revolving line of credit basis. You could respond to that.
We have done these in 2 separate ways. The last one that we did working capital was similar to how you were outlining it, Commissioner Inman, but most of the working capital we do directly with the company itself. It depends on the business plan and how they're utilizing the working capital. But this one works directly with the company itself. Do you want to extend on that?
Well, I would just say in the sources and uses form within their application, this is basically being used to bring on the new employees to basically get out and do more work into the field with Goodman Networks to really grow that side of the equation. And so you've got crew equipment, vehicles, and those kinds of things that are being taken care of by the ownership side of the equation and the bank with their increase. But this working capital piece is really to bring on new staff, to get 2 new crews out into the field.
Do they have a formal agreement on the new proposed
With Goodman?
relationship? Yeah.
I believe that they have started a purchase order with them. If I can have the company come up.
I just wonder if it's contingent upon them having some
It
kind of
is,
signed
it is
agreement.
contingent on a purchase order or a contract with Goodman Networks.
All right, okay.
Andy Robichek from Solaire. We have, each of the jobs that we do with Goodman is on a small specific PO project basis. Last year, we did $500,000 worth of them in about 5 months. They've asked us to do $2 million. They've offered currently for the next 3 to 4 months, we have $500,000 of purchase orders ready right now to do work on. So we know that the next process is there. We have about $500,000 of those POs currently available for us for work for the next couple of months. And they release them in couple-month basis. They don't say, here is $2 million worth of work for the next year. They have said to us, AT&T has a contract for us in the nation. We need to complete these by the end of the year. We roll out POs every couple of months to you. Here's what they look like. And they've given us the POs we have in hand for about $500,000 of that now for the next 3 months.
And the financial makeup of Goodman Networks? I mean,
Goodman
you can
is
make some
private
remarks.
company.
Make some remarks with regard to the financial.
Goodman is a private company. They are about $300 million in revenue. They are backed by a private equity organization in Arkansas as well. Stevens Network, or Stevens Company in Arkansas.
Did we look at the financials of that company in the review process? Yeah. The strength of the business that they're going to be doing business with?
The EDC did not look at Goodman Networks financials.
Goodman is the general contractor on this. All the work is for AT&T.
Okay. So AT&T is going through them?
Yeah, AT&T, Goodman is a general contractor, sort of like a General Dynamics, but a little bit smaller basis.
Okay.
They have a contract for a significant part of the United States. They outsource that state by state. We've been doing a lot of this work. It's actually, most of this work is in Wisconsin, so our people are actually traveling to Wisconsin to do a lot of this work for them in those areas. But the actual underlying provider is AT&T.
Oh, okay. Well, I got a little more comfort level with that then. Okay, all right, good.
Ross?
I do sit on the EDC board, and the EDC did approve this with 1 negative vote, and I was the one person who voted against it. And the reason I voted against it is because I felt it was an unacceptable level of risk, that we are supposed to be providing gap financing, and there's already an existing loan with Traverse City State Bank. I think there may be some other debt also that we were not privy to, but we are just coming in with, at this point, the great bulk of the money additional being loaned. And then we take second on everything, which means that, you know, we will be the last to see any money if anything does go wrong. And I just wanted to explain why I voted no on the project.
Chris?
First, Gene, thank you for the financials on Monday. And I have to say, I don't think this should have even been brought in front of this board, nor do I think it should have been brought in front of the EDC board. And I've got a number of problems, and I want you to understand that I've consulted 2 MBAs and 3 accountants, most recently yesterday at Plant Moran. You can't tie the cash flow statements to the balance sheets. The numbers don't match. And you should be able to tie these numbers together, and you can't. There are 3 different sets of income numbers. The only reason that this company is in business today, in my opinion, and based upon the conversations I've had over the last 2 days, is its ability to acquire debt. I have never seen a retained earnings negative this high, and yet you value this company at an astronomical amount of money. It isn't true. And I would recommend that, and again, I'm just basing this on from what I heard from 5 different people. I would recommend that you take these numbers, audited numbers, to Plant Moran and get a proper evaluation of what this company has. When you have a negative cash balance, I said, how can you have a negative cash balance to Plant Moran yesterday? And they said the most common way you have a negative cash balance is you write checks, but you don't have money in the bank. I'm not suggesting that that is the case here, but this amount of negative cash is huge. I'm sorry to have to say this publicly. Again, I don't think this should have been brought in front of this board. I don't think it should have been brought in front of the EDC board. I would not approve this unless I saw some audited reports. Well, I'm sorry, but this is taxpayer money. I have a fiduciary responsibility, and anyone looking at these numbers would say no.
Jason? I have to agree with Commissioner Max Bauer to the extent, first of all, we don't have enough information to be loan officers. And secondly, philosophically, I don't think government ought to be a bank. I don't think it has a proper place in government. We shouldn't be loaning money to people if the banks aren't willing to loan money to people, whether it be a gap solution or otherwise. And so I can't support this myself.
Rob? Thank you. I initially questioned whether the cell phone industry is an industry that needs a hand up from the government. It seems to be booming. But my question is, if Cell-Air does not get this contract, who's going to do the work?
My assumption is, since a lot of this work is in the Wisconsin area, they will find other subcontractors to do the work in that area.
Okay.
It won't be work with
It won't be
work with tax dollars returning here.
Okay.
Larry?
It was an older practice that the county commission got a packet of financials and a copy of the personal financial statement, with the understanding that, we wouldn't release that information in terms of the personal financial statements. But I haven't had a chance to look at the balance sheet and the operating statement and the projections on these, and I'm just wondering if we could have an opportunity to take a look at those if we can, either by going up to your office or whatever.
And any commissioner is welcome to the financials. We did this last year, or 2 years ago. We provided all of the financials to the commissioners, and then it was determined you did not want to have the financials. You just wanted an outline. You left the review of the financial and the impact to the EDC. But you are always welcome to come up to our office and look at the financials, and as I gave Christine a copy of the financials themselves. The EDC did review them. I'm more than happy to go through those with you, or the chairman of the EDC. They as well went through them too, so they did go in pretty good depth on the
I
review.
have a lot of questions based upon what you gave me.
We're more than happy to sit down and talk with you about them.
So I just want you to know that I had a lot of dealings with doing subcontractors of subcontractors in my business. And it's the way business is being done today. National companies come in and contract with a company that takes over the whole country, and then they go into communities and contract with people within those communities to take the contract. It's the way of business. I mean, banks have been doing that for years now, and they've been able to reduce their costs so dramatically because of that they are putting themselves in a very competitive advantage when they do it. So I think that this is a golden opportunity. I think it's jobs. I would hope that we hire people locally, that we're going to put people locally together, that these 8 people are going to be Traverse City people that are Grand Traverse County people that are going to be going to work. So, you know, I really think this is the way to go. And it is a cash flow problem. There's no two ways around it, because, you know, they pay you after the fact, and you've got to be able to keep your cash in there, and your line of credits are maxed out in order to be able to do that. Larry?
Well, I guess at this point, I'm willing to give the benefit to the EDC board in terms of the action taken, but given that this is a preliminary approval that will be going to the board in 2 weeks, that gives me or anybody else plenty of time to go up and visit with Gene and their staff to take a look at the financials for our final determination at our board meeting on March 30th. So,
sure. Sonny?
I guess the question that I had, and, you know, it was just simply a matter, when I look at, you know, Traverse City State Bank's on the hook for $560,000, and we're asking for a gap financing, if you will, of 280. Where did that 280 number come from? And I was just kind of curious why we found that number. You know, it just seems like that's 50% of their total debt is going to be to us, you know, or 50% of the.
We originally looked at this is the revolving fund based on hiring new people, and we were hiring 8 new people, and the dollar amounts, you know, targeted in that range was $35,000 per person to do that in the revolving loan. That will help us make it through that measure, you know, period of time, so the dollars did match the number of hires that we were looking for. Those, to answer your question, Herb, as well, those people are all local. We've hired everyone local, and we drive over to those sites to do the work when it's there.
Chris?
I would encourage you to take a look at these numbers. I don't think there's going to be 8 jobs created. I'm not sure, well, I would encourage you to sit down and look at the financials.
Yeah. Do we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Richardson?
No.
Thomas?
Because of the jobs, yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
No.
Henschel?
No.
Inman?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
No.
Limcool?
Yes. Motion
Fails 4-4.
4-4.
44.
Motion fails.
So motion fails. So what's your next step then on this?
There is.
I'll have to go back to the company and
Okay.
go back to the EDC possibly.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Next up is the EDC loan 45th parallel.
We are also accompanied by representatives, Dennis Velkanoff of 45th Parallel, Mark Toda from Traverse Bay Manufacturing, Ed Hammer from the Wooden Hammer, Lindy Bishop, the Elk Rapids Village EDC Director, and Tom Earhart from the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. This is our first application outside of Grand Traverse County, and a loan that has positive impact on the creation of jobs and the retention of jobs for 2 current businesses that are in operation. 45th Parallel is a proposed startup company in Elk Rapids that will manufacture furniture and market that furniture to a large multi-location retail throughout the Midwest. 45th will lease space out of a vacant building located in the village of Elk Rapids and provide Traverse Bay Manufacturing, which is an Elk Rapids business, providing cutting and sewing, and Wooden Hammer providing the wooden frames. The working capital, as you all know, is the most difficult to receive for a startup company, and this request is for $150,000 to purchase materials and labor and provide produce initial samples that they are needed. The majority of the equipment is already contained in Traverse Bay Manufacturing and the Wooden Hammer. Mr. Velkanoff is currently working with banks to secure a $75,000 equipment loan. Dennis has worked with Northern Lakes Economic Alliance, which is similar to the Traverse Bay EDC, but they work with the northern counties. They have worked with the company, the Village of Elk Rapids, and the EDC to package this loan. The The strength and in the partnering of the two established businesses brings retention of jobs. The retention for Traverse Bay Manufacturing is 5 and creating 3. Retention for Wooden Hammers is 3 and creating 2. And 45th Parallel with the new business would create 13 employees. The recommendation from the EDC is a $150,000 working capital loan contingent on receiving a $75,000 bank loan for equipment. The term is 7 years. The interest is 3.25, and the collateral will be second on all equipment and business assets and first on receivables. The personal guarantees from the two primary owners, the added requirement, because this is a startup company, will be that they continue to work with the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance and give quarterly reports to the EDC.
Do I have a motion?
I would move for approval of a $150,000 working capital loan to 45th Parallel Furniture, contingent on a bank commitment of $75,000 for equipment.
Support.
Do we have any discussion? Go ahead, Rob.
This did pass out of the EDC. Obviously, it did pass unanimously. What I personally liked about this was, first of all, there was a very detailed business plan that obviously put a lot of time and effort into what they were going to do in creating this furniture company. They're using two existing companies, the resources of two existing companies, making those businesses stronger while they create their own business as well. And basically drawing a new type of business to the area. So obviously, as in any case like this, there is risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking for the county.
Jason.
So outside of Grand Traverse County, as you know, I disagreed with that when we brought it up last. I represent Grand Traverse County, and I noticed, I know the EDC wasted no time in taking advantage of this. I did do a little bit of follow-up on the principles, and from what I see, decent enough, good business practices, and but good enough also to get loans outside of the favorable interest rate provided by the EDC. So philosophically, again, I don't think the county should be a bank, and particularly outside of the county.
Chris?
I thank you again, Gene, for the business plan. I read it. I had some input from people who know what they are doing better so than I. I think it's an excellent business plan. I think it's going to be a success, and I support it.
Sonny?
Well, I think the big piece that I see here is two well-established companies coming together to provide another product. And I think that's a great thing. I'd love to drive by the Super Tool building and actually see windows and glass in the windows instead of spray paint and busted glass.
Right.
But, and Jason, for your point, I still believe that anything we do to bring jobs into this region brings jobs into our community. Yep. And Elk Rapids is not that far outside of our community, and these people that are going to have these jobs, some of them I'm sure are going to live in Grand Traverse County, and a vast majority of them are going to spend time and money in Grand Traverse County. So I'm certainly supportive of anything that brings jobs to this community, and I will support this.
Okay, Rob?
What is the barrier to conventional financing for this company?
Working capital.
But banks just don't want to do startups, or?
Don't want to do startups, don't want to do, I think banks have moved into a space now where they're looking to finance real estate to some degree, personal property to another degree. When you get to working capital, and you're talking about inventory financing and receivables financing and things you can't get your hands on in terms of collateral, they're not touching any of that.
Okay. And is someone here from this company?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Dennis Valcano. I live in Elk Rapids. I want to give you a brief history because it is somewhat unique. First of all, I know it's out of the area. But I can tell you the amount of money I've spent in Traverse City bringing major dealers to the area is far in excess of other areas. It's a unique business model because about 5 years ago, I ran into Mark Todoff at Traverse Bay, and at that time I was working for a company called Berkline. And it was a question of doing cutting and sewing projects or taking it to China. At that time, we lost out to China. The dynamics of China have changed. It's changed not only by way of its cost, but as our retailers have determined, that food chain is an awfully long ways away. If I ordered a fabric today, cut and sew in China, it would take me 14 to 16 weeks. That's a very dangerous proposition to play with the American consumer. For she changes her habits and colors maybe sooner than that, and then at that point in time, you've got a lot of obsolete inventory. This business model is built upon something completely different. We won't produce a product till it's sold. We will cut and sew everything domestically, and it will be domestic fabrics that we will purchase, and we will offer great value to the customers. We will not be the cheapest. There's plenty of people that will do it cheaper, but if you look underneath it, there's a reason why it's cheaper. The reason why the banks won't touch it is it's a startup, short, sweet, and simple, for working capital. My partner and I, Steve Heckenleibel, who lives in Minneapolis, we've both got selling experience. We bring that to the table with Mark and Ed, so we think we bring a unique business model together to do that. There is risk, absolutely, but I would tell you that my signature's on it, Steve's signature's on it. We have a lot of money invested in it. And the nice part of this is when we put an order in, we order the cut and sew samples from Mark to deliver the fabrics to us on a Tuesday. The following Tuesday, deliver them to us. The same thing we'll do with Ed. We will create an assembly line process that will produce 40 pieces of furniture a day that will go down the line, be bagged, be shipped, and sent out within that same week. It's a very unique business model because I don't have to spend $1 million that they've got in equipment. We're taking their equipment, taking advantage of their equipment, and making it more usable for them, covering more of their costs, and at the same time tying it all together to say we can create the furniture in the upper north, in the northern part of Michigan. In all honesty, freight's going to become a bigger issue too, as all of us pay more for fuel. The best example I can give you, there are a lot of retailers around here, including one in the state of Michigan that has probably 3 trucks driving by a day, that has 36 stores and a 75% market share, that would like to be able to say that they don't have to pay freight to deliver their product back to their warehouse to redeliver it. It is a different business model. We think all the components have come together to make it work, but I wouldn't be doing it unless I felt we could be very successful. And I will tell you that a company I just came from did $120 million in sales. It had 800 employees, and it was a U.S.-based company. There is a great opportunity to grow this, not only to what we do with it, but in all honesty, the extra spin-off that we think we can do for Mark and Ed in their respective businesses can be equally as large by way of employment. I'd be more than willing to answer. Without the northern initiative of Tom and Andy there, without obviously Tino and Gene, this has been a push project. It's been a push because it takes a lot of effort. I've been working on it, frankly, for 4 months, trying to pull all the loose ends together, and I kept waiting for something to fall so I didn't have to do the project. As it turns out, everything has fallen in place. The best one I can tell you is one of the things I want is somebody who knows how to make samples and knows how to make furniture. So we have to have somebody who can make furniture. Well, as it turned out, a gentleman applied from the Michigan Works. I actually had 3 people that I can consider. One applied from Michigan Works, who worked at Grand Rapids for Kindle Furniture, was a high-end furniture company, made their samples, and actually a month and a half ago moved to Bel Air. So it's one of those where certain things you start saying to yourself, the stars have lined up on it. We need lumber. We need transportation. I've already had discussions with the resort. One of the things I'm going to do differently is I'm not going to spend $35,000 or $40,000 for a furniture market at High Point, which is in 2 weeks. I will go for other reasons. We're going to fly the dealers in, put them up here, entertain them in the area, which will be Traverse City. Elk Rapids doesn't have a place really we want to put them into right now. But I do want to take and show them the plants, the facilities, and show them that we can make furniture in the marketplace. Any questions you've got, more than willing to ask them.
You need some good, well-designed wine racks?
Once we start selling stuff, sir, there's lots of things we put a sales force behind it.
Yeah. I believe I still have the floor. I just wanted to say that initially, I did vote against allowing our EDC money to be used outside of our county. But I just want to say the bigger picture is if I can keep jobs in northern Michigan versus going to China, I'm for that, and that's bigger to me than the other issue.
I look forward to your furniture as a consumer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Two things. If you haven't, it's a great book. The guy from Dow Chemical wrote a book called, Andrew Livis, called Make It in America. It really talks in great detail why we have to make things in America, but it mostly talks about the spin-off. A tourism job, and I'm a big tourist myself, creates 0.7 jobs as a spill-off. A manufacturing job is 1.4, and that's a big number for us to remember. That's long-term jobs. Those are jobs, and realistically, in 3 to 5 years, it would be nothing to say that building doesn't have 150 employees in it, besides what the other guys have. Because it doesn't take much once we get rolling every line will produce about $4 million of product. And that line is 10 to 12 people.
The only thing I'd like to say is I think we've got, $1.3 million in our fund to loan out?
1.5.
$1.5 million. It doesn't do any good at all to sit in our bank. It doesn't create one job sitting in our bank. And we really need to find these places that we can start to invest in. And I'm disappointed we didn't do it with Cellular because we are the risk taker. And that's, taking risks with that money is what it's all about. And that's why it's important that we approve some of these projects, get them going, get that money out of our bank and get it into theirs, get it in their hands so they can start creating jobs. Okay, do I need to do a roll call? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
No, please.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carried.
Congratulations.
Gentlemen, good luck. Next is on the agenda is general fund trial balance.
If we could turn to page 83, the general fund trial balance for the month of February is provided. I'm going to just walk through the revenue detail on page 83, I misspoke, and then the expenditures on 85 or 84. There's really not a lot to report with 2 months completed in our fiscal year, which is the calendar year. The notes explain the significant variances. Tax revenues are generally, there's not a lot of tax revenue in the first 6 months because we've gone to the summer tax levy. But the thing that we are seeing are, on a regular basis, both Board of Review adjustments and Michigan Tax Tribunal adjustments. And then the other main variance is the local unit contributions, and that was just a timing. Those invoices for the first quarter are going out. They've actually been invoiced in the month of March, so that will correct itself. On the expenditure side, which is on page 84, I was actually surprised to see that year-to-date, compared with last year, our expenditures are down, and it's primarily because of personnel, vacant FTEs in our sheriff's office, but also with the positions that were eliminated in the 2011 budget. That's accounting for $154,000 of our difference compared with a year ago. And that's pretty much the only items of significance through February 28th.
Can you tell me, in regard to the personnel expenditures in the Sheriff's Department, how much of that is being offset by overtime? Do we have any idea? Because I know they're working a lot of it.
Yeah, the overtime at corrections is high. They're implementing new software currently, the New World system. I have talked to Captain Hall about that more than once. Generally, what we do with that is, and they have been able to, for as long as I can remember, that's covered with the vacant FTEs. It was not a significant enough variance to report it yet. But overtime at the jail, at corrections, is running rather high.
It's a chronic problem that we continue to work on right now. While we're closer to full staffing at the jail, we have 2 people that have chronic illnesses that require them to be off a lot. And the result of that is need to use overtime when we can't schedule for their absences. And we're working on both of those issues as well.
But my initial analysis of that was that within that overtime, the way it's tracking through 2 months, and even beyond that, because we've obviously had payrolls after that, it will be absorbed or covered within the personnel budget.
I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot, but I just heard 2 different things. I heard Dean say that the overtime in the jail was due to the installation of the new software, and then Dennis, you said that was like a typical chronic problem that we had overtime in the jail.
Well, we've always had, yes, both are true. We've always had a chronic problem with extra use of overtime in the jail. And Dean is right. It was primarily a result of having vacancies in the jail where we had to fill shifts. And that still exists, but not at the same level. Lately, we've been more...
Because we're at better staff.
We're at better staff.
Than we had been, right?
But Dean is right. We have, they have assigned a person who works on the New World Development System who's got to help develop the software. Right. And that person's time has been put in there. But we also have 2 individuals that are having some chronic illness problems. And I know that from my involvement in grievances and arbitrations, that has been an issue that we're dealing with.
Okay. So how much more time before we're basically done with the installation of the new software, that it's up and running?
Captain Hall has told me that in terms of the corrections, they're close, but they have other issues with, we have 2 individuals here working on the field reporting. We feel we're beyond it in terms of corrections. I can't answer or anticipate what overtime we may incur with the other components of that software.
So now it's more dealing with the electronic ticketing and the field staff then?
They're currently in the field reporting. I don't think we
haven't started electronic ticketing
yet. Electronic ticketing yet.
All right, thank you. Questions?
Dean, as we all know, the price of gasoline has risen recently. How is that impacting our budget? And how are we dealing with it? I know how it's impacting our budget. How are we dealing with it?
We have not quantified what the budget impact is. I have had one very brief meeting with the sheriff and the undersheriff. They're aware of the budget issue. All I can say at this point in time, Commissioner Maxbauer, is that is something I should bring back next month.
And Dean, I think you told me in our staff meeting yesterday, the sheriff has the new lieutenant, Randy Fulis, evaluating the impact of the increase in gas costs, and he's waiting to get his report from the new lieutenant, which then we will look at and kind of put together a plan for funding.
The price is so much higher, it's got to be better gas, so they'll get better mileage.
Sure, yeah.
I think last year we were $40,000 to $50,000 over estimated spending. That's the number I recall, Dean. Do you remember?
That's correct.
Jason, do we have to that point? Do we have existing contracts right now for our purchases at a certain price?
I think you just approved them a month ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're good for 6 months.
Well, it's not at a frozen price.
We bid out automated fuel services, and Schmuckel Oil was awarded a 3-year contract, and that was just done last month. It's basically their rack price, which is a wholesale price. They do add on a percentage. I don't know what that is, but we do pay, our fuel cost is net of the 3 taxes. I mean, that is somewhat of a help, but it's still going to be higher than what we budgeted.
Would it be possible going forward to contract for a fixed price And, you know, I mean, there may be an incentive for them to do it, looking forward. They're going to be gambling, but we would have a fixed amount.
I think we just had some initial discussions on that. Dennis has, when we had our management team meeting last week, we were looking at areas where we could perhaps consolidate with, TCAPS or NMC. I know from what I heard that TCAPS buys fuel in bulk, and I believe they have a contract, so there would definitely be the potential for some type of savings there. The only issue we would have is we don't have a place to store that fuel. We would have to partner with, we currently fuel at the Schmuckel gas stations, and they have a site down on Park, Woodmere.
Yeah. Right.
But that is something that we have just started to discuss.
TCAPS in the city and Road Commission, of course. But to give you an example, and it's not a perfect example, but just remember we let you know about the natural gas prices last month. And we settled at, what was it, $4.74? $4.74, and we did ask them about giving us a 2-year price instead of a 1-year price, and they took it to $5.34 in order to do a 2-year guarantee. Right. So, it's the risk-reward thing, and I really think if we're going to do something along the lines of what you're suggesting, Commissioner, the way to do that is to be able to buy in bulk with another unit and then be able to utilize those. In the past, we've tried to do that with the city. They've indicated their system is not big enough to accommodate all our vehicles. So,
well, much in the way that service contracts are bought through a capital expense or through a planning expense for the year. I mean, I just thought that might be.
Yeah, I think
then we know what we've got coming at us.
Yep, I think there is some potential, especially if we could add our volume to TCAP's volume or to the school's volume, or a combination of them, and then let them buy it in bulk, and then we just utilize it. That, it may require an accounting system, some kind of an auditing system, so we can have, pass cards and things, but in the long run, I think it might be a better way for us to go.
Commissioner Thomas?
Rob, did what I hear yesterday come close to being right, that the wholesale price of gasoline right now is $3.53?
I don't know the current. It varies every day. We get a fax of new pricing now.
I bought some gas yesterday, and the guy says, it was $3.63, and he says, what can we do? He says, wholesale was $3.53. That's not much profit.
Okay, any other questions, Ross?
Oh, no, I didn't have a question. I was just going to make a motion to approve the budget adjustments as presented.
Second.
Support.
Okay, any discussion on the budget adjustments?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting.
Yeah, Mr.
Dean, how
Chairman.
many years is this?
This is 4?
This is the 5th year.
Fifth year.
Very happy. And
They're
don't
not
wanna
counting.
Cut Dennis off, but
No.
very happy to report that we did receive the GFOA award. Again, there's always, it's not a guarantee. Financial statements, reporting requirements change, and it does take a good amount of effort to stay up on the standards, and the Governmental Accounting Standards Board does throw a lot of new things at you. One of the new standards coming out is there's going to be some changes in the special revenue funds, and we have a significant number of special revenue funds. But very happy to report that we did receive the award. Not all governmental units submit their annual financial report to this review. It's very stringent. Chris Kramer pointed out, if you read the letter from the GFOA, I certainly was not withholding, it was not my intent to withhold their comments and findings. I will make a copy of that and put it in each of the commissioners' boxes so you have it. They do make comments and suggestions, and I have to respond to those. I would like to submit our 2010 report when we have the audit done. There's a $580 cost to do that, but this is very good to receive this, and we're right up there with the best when we get this award.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I know how much Dean likes to take this plaque home and put it under his pillow because it took me 6 months to get the last one hung up after it got here. But I would certainly encourage, this will come to the board chairman in a box. I'm sure you have to show it to Dean, but then let's get Danny to get it hung up down by the elevator
All right,
with the
good.
other ones, please.
We're going to walk.
And again, I just want to, I know you all appreciate Dean's good work, but I just want to thank him for this work.
Yeah.
He does an excellent job, and really, there are very few governments that get this award, and it kind of should tell the board and our citizens that, that this is a Department of Excellence and that they work very hard to make sure that the accounting and the finances in appropriate order.
And it's not just myself. I mean, Bill helps, all of the departments help with this. John Syke in Planning helps with the comments and recommendations. There's a management MD&A component. Heidi does most of the legwork on preparing, and yes, I do the review, but it's a joint effort. I can't take all of the credit.
There are two quick additional things that I just want to mention to the board, very quick. First one is we are anxiously awaiting the final numbers for the 2010 tax collection. This is important for you to understand because while the board wants us to be as accurate as we can with our predictions, we want you to realize that 2010 is over, and we're just now, in the next week or so, settling the 2010 taxes. So I hope you recognize the difficulty in budgeting when it takes you 4 months after the year is closed before you know what your revenue ended up being. And this is particularly important because of the tax delinquencies. Bill tells me this year looks like it will be a better year for tax delinquencies than last year. Those numbers are still out. But, for example, you can see Bill sitting over there. You see those two piles of papers that are probably 5 or 6 inches deep? Those are the tax foreclosures that he's signing.
Wow.
1 page each. So, and now remember, that just means the taxes weren't paid.
Right.
They have another year to pay them before the actual procedure starts. I just think it's really important to recognize that it's really tenuous times, and, these numbers are just, they're up in the air. I mean, it's very difficult to predict what this year's tax collections are going to be when we won't really know what the actual tax collections are till next March. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Good, thank you. And then the other thing is, I'm just going to pass this out for you. We're getting ready to do the bond refinancing on the wastewater treatment plant. This is the report from Standard & Poor's. Every time we do a bond issue, they have to rate us, and they have to do a report for the investors as we sell these bonds. I'm happy to report that our bond rating stayed the same. We were hopeful that it would go up, but we have a AA bond rating, and it was reaffirmed by Standard & Poor's. There's some really good information in here, so if you have time, please read it. I think any time in this economy, in this state, that you can maintain a bond issue of AA, you're doing very well. And so we were very pleased with that. In addition, Standard & Poor's revised our county financial management assessment from standard to good, indicating that our financial management, in their eyes, has improved, and so that's a positive thing as well. So congratulations to the staff who worked on this, and like I said, we had hoped it would go up, but I think that might have been wishful thinking in this economy, but I guess we should be happy that it at least stayed at AA. So
Nice slide on 2 additional items.
Yep, thank you.
Next is administration, is the governmental security audit recommendations.
Morning, Catherine.
Good morning. Katie Lauren, Grand Traverse County Administration. Before you are the recommendations from staff based on the governmental center audit that was performed by DK Security. That audit was done by Steve Peckrell, who's the Director of DK Operations, as well as Jimmy Patrick, Regional Operations Manager, who many of you are familiar with. The purpose of the audit was to detect vulnerabilities in the governmental center, and what they did was performed a physical security audit and then also did a survey of the employees to kind of gauge how they felt and their safety level, and took that information, made recommendations to protect both the citizens and the employees here and to ramp up our physical security. Staff consisted of Dennis Aloya, Ben Bifas, City Manager, myself, Dean Bott, Jimmy Patrick again, and Danny Brown. We met and reviewed the recommendations provided by DK Security and went through and then prioritized based on need of what we felt was the most important. Those are outlined in a tiered system, with Tier 1 being the highest priority. I won't go through all of the items because there's several, but of all the low-hanging fruit, as we call it, we have taken care of everything of low or little cost that we possibly could, including locking down the building with the exclusion of the public vestibule, which is the main entrance to the building. I'm going to start with the intrusion alarm system. The Gov Center does not have an intrusion alarm system, but they identified that it would be something that would be beneficial to have at some point. We have recommended that be a third tier, which would be of the lowest priority. Second thing is the proximity card system, which is letter C under access control. We currently utilize the proximity card system, of which 400 to 500 county and city employees have access to. 60% of those employees with cards have access to this building. We are taking no further action at this time, but we do have in the basement area is our mail room, and sometimes unwanted individuals can have access to that area. So the recommendation is to, at some point, install an additional proximity card reader in the basement to keep out those unwanted individuals. As far as the county treasurer's safe room, it was determined that several or various employees had keys to that safe room. Unfortunately, that was never compromised in any way, but what we did was rekey that door, so only the necessary individuals have access to that room now. However, our second tier recommendation is to have a motion-activated camera installed in that room so we can have 24-hour coverage of that safe room.
How many pictures of Bill do we want in there? Count
Yeah. That's Bill, all the time. Another third tier recommendation is for all employees and county officials to start utilizing the photo ID badges. We currently all have them issued to us at the start of service. Look at Rob has his right there. Very good. The city at this time does not have.
I was ready for that.
Dennis had his on yesterday. But the city does not utilize the badge system at this time. But Ben indicated that he at some point may look at implementing that system if we go forward with that. Just part of the challenge with that is changing the culture, because we don't wear our badges here, and it would just really be getting people into the habit of doing that. And one of the things DK Security said was that is critical for identification purposes. We really need to implement that, and that is a low-cost, no-cost effort that we have there. One of the higher cost things that we
I did
have.
have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ross.
That's okay, because you comment about the city of Traverse City,
Mm-hmm.
because of course we share the building. Has this been discussed with them?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Are
We
they- are-
discussed that with Ben, and he did say that, they don't have a program now, but they would look at it maybe down the line after we implement it.
Oh, wants to
after
see
we
us all wearing our badges
Yeah,
first? Okay.
exactly.
Well, once, when we talked to Ben, I think, I don't know when they will, but obviously, part of the issue is they don't have the equipment to do badges, but we've offered, that we could do that.
But we have the equipment,
Yeah,
right?
and we've offered that,
For a
and
small fee.
I think we'll look at, we're talking with Jen, and we'll look at doing it first. And, really, it's I never thought of it that way. It's not for us, but it's when there's an issue and security people need to come into the building, or the public comes in and they don't know who works there and who doesn't. So it really does make sense, and like, as Katie said, I put mine on yesterday. I thought it would be just blatantly wrong to put it on today, because I haven't worn one in about 3 years, but I think that's something very easy to do. No.
Second tier recommendation would be to install a closed-circuit television system. Central Dispatch, for one, they're a 24/7 operation, and, they have no sight into who's in the building, who's in the parking lot, et cetera, when they're up in their pod up there. So EPS has given us a preliminary proposal to install a total of 5 surveillance camera, or 7, excuse me, 5 indoor and 2 exterior cameras. Cameras need to have pan, tilt, zoom, and low light capabilities, and the total estimate was approximately $30,000.
Katie?
Yes.
Wouldn't we normally, or Dennis, wouldn't we normally go out for a bid?
Yes, this is
On
just
that thing.
This is-
completely preliminary.
Okay,
We
you were
wanted
just trying to get an
estimate. Exactly.
That's all, just to give you an idea. And this
Okay.
is what we consider a Tier 2
Yes.
proposal. So I'm letting you know that I'm expecting Tier 2 proposals would all go to budget for your consideration during the budget time. We don't have money for
Okay,
this
all right.
issue, for these issues right now.
My only recommendation would be that you probably do more cameras than the 7 you're talking about. And if you're going to install the system, it's a whole lot cheaper to do more cameras at the time when you install it than try to add them later.
Now, that's good,
Yeah.
that's a good point. We are going to have to, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, I actually have a video monitoring system in my business, and it's quite useful.
The one thing that, well, money will always be an issue. It's been identified too, for us that we think, or that the security company thinks we need more cameras in the Hall of Justice. And so, we may have to look at doing something in that building. So, and I haven't even talked to them about the Circuit Court building. So we may have to evaluate, and I think it's just going to become a financial issue for you about what we can afford to do and what we can't. And, generally, I think our priority for at least the camera system, that's why it's Tier 2, is going to be in the court building. That's probably, we got to make sure we keep good security in that building first, but this will be all discussed at budget.
Can I just say, I was recently at the Library of Congress in Washington DC, the Capitol Building, and the White House, and all 3 were easier to get into than our local courthouse.
Yes, there is. Jason?
As far as cameras go, I mean, I could certainly offer my expertise as far as
Yes, you can.
properly estimating the cost of what might be needed, having been in the business for a while. I got to tell you that this report is great. This is a good report.
Thank you.
And I think it addresses things in the appropriate way, too.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have,
Well, I'm sorry.
you're not done presenting, so I have one question.
You want to go ahead? Wait.
You skipped as you were going through, you skipped on the opening procedure. I have a quick question for you.
Sure,
On
go
page
ahead.
100. It says that we normally open up the front vestibule at 6:45 a.m., and I'm assuming that's predominantly for the 7:30 county commission meetings and any other meetings that might be going on here at the governmental center. I know that obviously we're moving our morning meetings to the evening, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't have a morning meeting throughout the year that we need to plug in just for scheduling purposes. And I don't know if anybody else plans on having any meetings here that early in the morning, but it says here that the action taken would be facilities would unlock those doors at 7:30 a.m. So if you have a meeting at 7:30 a.m., you would be, you need to probably back that up to 7.
Commissioner, obviously, we already did, you got in this morning.
I understand, but
It's completed, and so on days where there's meetings, we have people open them early.
So they know the schedule?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
Well, what was identified was there was a normal day, normal business day, when the meeting was not occurring, that there was a 45-minute gap when there was either staff was not here or et cetera. The doors were
Or
just
you might have-
opened early.
Yeah, or you might have a clerk down in the city treasurer's office all by herself.
Right.
So we accommodate for special meetings that are going on, by boards and other people, and we open the building early for those. They have, every day, facilities gets our schedules, and they know
Okay,
what our
all right,
schedules
okay,
are.
good.
But for other employees that come in early, because others do come in before
You gotta keep
7:30, they use the key, and they
Keep
have
that
a
on
key, and
site.
they use the door.
Right,
So,
okay.
yep, everyone
All right.
has access.
Good question.
Any other questions for?
Well, there's still a couple more things to go through.
Couple more. This was our only first tier, and it was regards to the panic alarm systems. And there's 2 on the first floor in the city and 1 in the commission chambers, which is adjacent to Dennis, I believe. Dean, okay.
Don't touch it.
Yeah.
I grab it sometimes.
Brace yourself.
What they felt was that this was of high priority in regards to the safety of our citizens and our employees that work in the buildings. We thought each service desk on the first floor should have a panic button, as well as the city manager's office, county administration, human resources. And I think there was one other. Maybe that was it. Anyway, once that system is installed, it would be monitored by central dispatch, which, if I didn't mention, they would also, if we install closed-circuit television, they would also be monitoring that system.
So the one thing we are proposing today, we have money in the budget for it, but we would like to install the panic alarms. That was a kind of a high priority thing that they suggested for us for these locations, and the cost is about $925 and then $45 a month per panic alarm. They identified that we're really short on those.
Dennis, I guess my question, currently the panic alarms are transmitted to the historic courthouse, correct? So are we, as part of this, changing those and having them go to central?
That panel is maxed out, so this would be the installation of new panels, which would be for this building, which is why it would be monitored by central dispatch.
Well, but if we're going to have central monitor these, we need to have the ones that are downstairs also go to central.
They're going to go to central.
Yeah.
We're going to change this
All
whole
of
building
this
over
whole
to a new
building.
panel, and this building would be on a separate panel monitored by dispatch.
What's the, why is it $45 a month per button?
That's what it costs. That's what it costs.
A maintenance
Because,
fee.
well, because they monitor the calls, and what happens is that call will actually go to Grand Rapids and then be transferred. Our location.
There's efficiency.
Yeah, well, that's how they are. It will be monitored in Grand Rapids and will come to our dispatch center from Grand Rapids. They monitor these alarms.
Who's they?
EPS in this case.
EPS.
That's our consultant that we've been using in all our other
It
buildings.
just seems,
What's
I
wrong with
know.
the wireless
it
doorbell?
seems that if we had a lot of these, that there'd be some sort of a package deal or something. I don't know. It just seems $45 a month per button when most of the time these are never going to be used.
That's correct. A year ago, Danny Brown and I went out and I asked Danny to seek bids on other vendors to see what kind of a package number we could get, and then we went back to these and negotiated a price, and I believe, I can't guarantee this, I believe they dropped the price, and we negotiated a drop in this price from what it was, but I can't tell you what that number was, but we did not get a great decrease, and it was kind of verified.
So $45 a month per button is still cheaper than what it was before.
It is. That's my recollection. I'll go back and check that and bring you that information back. But we went through a bid procedure to look at others to try to find a cheaper price on this, because it is expensive.
Okay, so when it says, I'm sorry, then I'll shut up, but it says, so the newly installed alarm system will be monitored by central dispatch, but it's actually being monitored in Grand Rapids?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Katie. Did I get it right?
I was told, it kind of bounces, is the way the signal works, so it would be alerted in central dispatch and Grand Rapids simultaneously. So if the alarm is activated, central dispatch would be notified immediately and dispatch personnel if need be.
So I guess my question is if central dispatch is getting it at the same time, why do we need the thing in
Yeah,
Grand Rapids?
that wasn't my understanding, but we need to get you a
Yeah, I'll
clarification of
clarify
that.
that.
I thought it was going through Grand Rapids system, and whereas the other one goes through our corrections department, it goes down and they're monitoring it downstairs. But we need to clarify that. I'm sure Katie's right.
As far as cost goes, I mean, we've got Granny Smith wearing a quickie button that we're paying $24 a month for through the, I mean, that's a button. Couldn't we just use that and have them make the call to 911 at that point and save the $1,900 and $45 a month? I mean, pay $24 a month for the service. Couldn't that be arranged, I think?
I have no idea.
I'm not following what the Granny Smith button is.
Emergency response system that the
Purrs
Commission on
you,
Aging
yeah.
uses
Wow.
for seniors.
We can certainly look at that before we buy these, but I don't know. I have no idea.
You can help pay for it. with
Any
what
other
you're saving
questions?
on my phone, in fact.
So,
We won't buy that until we get some answers to these questions.
So, and I also think that if we got a 24-hour monitoring system here, we just buy our own buttons and install them through the central dispatch, and we eliminate EPS. I mean, I think it's a duplication of services. That's my feelings.
Well,
so
I understand where the board's at, and we'll get you some answers to
because you can
these
buy your own
questions.
button.
There are paging systems that, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Katie.
Thank you.
Next is unfinished business, MERS transfer provision.
Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director. I am back again this week with some answers to your questions. And just an overview, the memo was provided to you on Monday. I apologize, it wasn't in the packet. Just to go over a few of the questions that you had, how many retirement divisions do we have, and can we combine them into one division? We currently have 14 divisions, 12 are closed divisions. There are 2 open divisions, which are in circuit court. And 2 years ago, we looked into this, and we could combine 4 of the 12 closed units. Those were the only units that had similarities, whether it was the rider and the age and years of service that you could retire under. So 4 of those units could be combined. How many employees would this impact? Currently, the county has 84 employees in the defined benefit retirement plan, 25 of which are in the sheriff's department. I did talk with the undersheriff, and he said that this transfer provision, if it was not adopted, would be extremely detrimental to his department. It would really impede any sort of promotional opportunities that anyone would want to get within his department. And then there was a question raised about what would happen to someone who, if this provision is not adopted, if they moved into the defined contribution plan, what would happen to their defined benefit plan? And it would freeze until they then retired. So someone could move from a defined benefit, and then they would move to a defined contribution plan. And when they retired, they would in essence have both plans to make up a total.
But their years of service would be based on their time in defined benefit?
Correct.
And their final average compensation for defined benefit purposes would be their final average compensation while under defined benefit, not...
Which might have been from 15 or 20 years ago.
Could be,
yeah. At a lower rank. And
it'll be from the time that they changed from DB to DC.
Correct. And then the last question was concerning why this can only be adopted once, and that was really for to ensure that everyone is treated fairly and consistently within the entire municipality, to have employees, if it was adopted now and then changed later, we could have employees within that window that we could have a different plan, and then we'd have different employees on different plans, which we already do with 14 different divisions. That is why MERS is looking to have it be a one-time only decision. And that answers all the questions from last week.
Okay, Larry?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the MERS transfer provision.
Do I have support?
I'll support it, but what I was going to suggest is, do we need to have you draft the motion so we can get the language appropriate, or?
If you approve this motion today,
it?
Jen will work with our staff to draft the resolution that'll come to the board at the end of the month.
Actually, I believe it was in the, oh yeah, but there was one part of the RMA.
There was a sample resolution in the book.
And just to be clear, since I seconded the motion, Larry, what you are saying is that if someone who is under defined benefit gets promoted to another division, they can take their defined benefit with them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Jason?
Just so, and again, to be clear, it does stack. So it's not as if they're losing anything, they're just changing if they promote. And
they have 2 retirements as opposed to 1.
They have 2 retirements as opposed to 1.
Yes.
One might have a smaller, aggregately, it may or may not have a smaller benefit in the end.
That's correct.
Okay. Personally, I think that, if somebody wants to advance their career, they're going to advance their career, and I don't think it should be dependent on whether or not they may or may not have a smaller aggregate, benefit in the end. I think as a board, the board has decided that, at one point, the board had decided that we are going to move away from the defined benefit program, and this merely prolongs that on the basis of allowing it to move forward through the different positions. So I would probably not support it.
Okay. Do we have an estimate of the cost variation as one scenario versus another? I mean, what's this going to cost the county?
Well, go ahead, Jen.
I mean, I would say there's really no way to predict that, but I was going to look to you guys.
Yeah, let me take that one. I mean, personally, I support this because I don't think an employee should lose their retirement simply because to answer the question, we have an unfunded liability. This should not affect it because they're currently looking at the demographics, which include the 84 or 85 employees that are in the DB plan, so it shouldn't change.
We have a 9% payment if they contribute 3% under defined contribution. The defined benefit number could be 20%, 30%, 40%. The real question you're asking is, how is it impacted if they come out of the defined benefit, or retire? And those are the two unknown. You don't know when they're going to retire, and so you don't know what that liability is going to be or when that's going to change. So there's no actuarial that's been done that can tell you the difference in that. And the point is, if they come out of defined contribution, it doesn't necessarily change the percentage that unit is seeing because there's still this pool of people. But there potentially is a savings, as Commissioner Gilman said, because you know that you're limiting that liability from this point on at the 9%.
All right.
So do I understand, Dean, you're estimating there's not really a difference either way?
Well, as Dennis just pointed out, if the board doesn't approve this and the individual would go from a DB to a DC, there is a potential reduction in that liability for the county. I don't want to give you misinformation.
Okay.
There would be a savings.
But we just have no idea what it would be.
Ross?
As most of you know, I've been pretty much of a hawk on not increasing our liability under defined benefit and so forth. But I also believe that for those employees who are already under defined benefit, that we don't have a right to change their terms of employment. And because I think it does hamper someone who does want to move up the ladder, who is already under defined benefit and wishes to continue to that, I will certainly support it.
Sonny?
Well, that was basically the same point that Ross just made. You know, I believe most of the, well, all of the, well, with the exception of circuit court, all of the employees that we have that are on defined benefit are long-term employees. And should they choose to advance within our organization, I don't in any way want to penalize them for doing that. And I'm afraid that the requiring them to change is going to do that. And I'm concerned when MERS says that they're going to, how they're going to find a final average compensation for retirement when they've got two separate plans. You know, are they going to take the average that they'd made the last 3 years in defined benefit and the average that they made the last 3 years in defined contribution and average them together? You know, I just don't think I have the answer to how that's going to happen. But anyway, around it, I do not want to penalize any of our employees who choose to advance within our organization.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
No.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Lemkool?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is new business. Next is second public opinion, public comment. She walked out the door. Next, Commissioner Committee reports. So,
I'll just say East Bay Township turned down the idea of a one-hauler system unanimously and with applause.
Wow.
So, then also, the Conservation District is looking at putting on a tour for new commissioners. I think that I would strongly encourage you, they're looking at it sometime this spring when the snow starts to melt, that we can kind of walk around some of the trails. But I think it's also an opportunity for us to see, just how efficient they are and what some of the projects that they're doing. So hopefully we can put that together and make that happen. They are looking at doing a fundraiser coming up. They're still in the process of looking at it, but they could be part of the Dancing with the Stars. So that could be an interesting fundraiser, and I would encourage everybody to support that. Next is notices. Next meeting is tonight at 6 o'clock, which will be on the septic treatment plant settlement. Then 7 o'clock is the Board of Commissioners and Park and Recreation Commission. And then on the 23rd, we have a special Board of Commissioners meeting on the work plan at 7:30 in the morning. Is there anything else?
Just another reminder for the public that starting April 1st, all of our meetings will be at 7 o'clock in the evening in this room.
Right.
More morning meetings.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
I just had one very quick question. Dennis, our special meeting at 6 is here,
Our special meeting is in this room at 6 o'clock tonight.
but 7 o'clock is in the
7
back
o'clock.
room.
That's correct. That's that back corner room.
We're
the
still in
big
this
meeting room.
building.
Yep.
So is that going to be taped for
It is going to be taped for viewing at a later date.
review at a later date? Is there a meeting in here tonight then at 7, or?
No, they suggested, staff suggested that the bigger meeting be held in there simply because there are 18 board members, and they wanted to make it in a configuration so that you could all talk together. So they thought it would be more convenient in there.
Okay. Is there a closed session?
No.
There's no closed session? We are adjourned.
Commissioner, somebody dropped a marker there.
Yeah.